Okay folks, today's video is part 2 of refurbishing a classic wood steering wheel. So stay tuned. This thing on? Okay, so to recap from the last video, this is the second steering wheel that I have. I am not going to rivet out, I'm not going to drill out these rivets that hold in the wood slats like I did the last one. The wood slats here are loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically epoxy them to hold them together. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some triple-aught steel wool, and I'm going to try to clean up some of this chrome to see if I can get it to some of the shine to come back, or at least to get some of the oxidation and corrosion off of it on both sides. There's some little rust pits here and there, some rough spots here and there, things like that. But I mean, this thing's 40 plus years old. So I'm going to do that first because I don't want to start cleaning the chrome up after I've already fixed all the wood. Because then when I get up near the top, it'll damage. It'll come in contact with the clear coat that I put on, the polyurethane I put on, and it will damage the wood in that coating. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to try to clean some of this up first with some steel wool. Then I'm going to get into sanding down the wood lightly. There's some areas you might be able to see where somebody tried to put some chrome shine or some something like that on here, some compound, and they got some white markings on the wood. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean all that up. There's some areas where it looks like somebody dripped some polyurethane on at one time, kind of like right here. Then I'm going to go ahead and clean that up lightly sanding all that. So I'm going to do that next. I'll light sand next, and then after that, I'll start the polyurethane, and I'll start on the bottom first. I'll let the bottom dry, and then I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to do the top. And the reason again for that is you've got to put it down on the top portion to do the bottom, and so I don't want there to be any damage to the top when I go to do the bottom. So I'm going to do the bottom first. Let it dry, and then I'll do the top. And then once that's all done, I'm going to do a polish on the chrome and see if that brings back some of the faded areas here. So yeah, let's get going. Actually, I've got some quadruple zero grade quadruple zero steel wool. I want to try that first because it's more fine than the triple-aught. All right, I think that's the best I can do with the steel wool. Now I'm going to do a little bit of light sanding, try to get some more of this. Try to get some of this stuff off of here, off the wood. I'm going to start with 320 grit. See how that does. Again, I just want to do a light sanding. I don't want to get too crazy like I did on the last one. Okay, I think we're good. Again, I don't want to do too much sanding. I like the color already, so I'm not going to stain it. So next step here is I'm going to clean up my mess on the table. I'm going to wipe this down or I'm going to blow it off first, and then I'm going to wipe it down with a low lint cloth and some water just to get all the dust off. And then we'll prep for epoxy in between each of these seams on both the front and the back. I did notice a crack somewhere as well. Small one. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, I think it's right there. Let's see that. A crack right there. So I'll probably throw some epoxy in that as well, just to be safe. And once that epoxy dries, I'll probably let it dry overnight. Come back and prep it for polyurethane. All right, I'm gonna use this clear epoxy. It sets in 5 minutes. The stuff does dry super fast, so you gotta work with it pretty quick. And I'm using one of these brushes, which if you remember from my last video, I cut the bristles so that they don't flay out when you're trying to use them and kind of get more of an area than you really want. And then the bristles don't really come out when you cut them down like this. And then I just use a cover for takeout food. When you get your takeout food and they come in these plastic bins like these here, I just use the covers for those. That's what I use to mix the epoxy on. I'm gonna put gloves on again so I don't get this on my hands. Because my hands are all sweaty from the last pair of gloves. These ones don't want to go on as easy. All right, here we go. And like I said in my last video, you want to make sure that this is a two-part epoxy, so you want to make sure that you stir it really well, you mix it together really well. All right. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of get it into the crack. Unlike the last steering wheel, I can't take these apart and actually put the epoxy on the flange in between each piece. So I kind of want to try to get it into that crack as much as possible, into that space. let this dry overnight. And then I'll come back in the next day or two, sand it down one more time, and start getting our polyurethane on it. All right, so it's the next day. The epoxy has had time to dry overnight, and it's nice and solid now. I am gonna do some, when I go to sand down some of the white areas that I found, the additional sanding, I am gonna sand down some of this epoxy because there are some high spots. So I'm gonna work on those too. Try to get those a little more flush and smooth. The other thing I wanted to point out was that I pulled off the drive assist knob off of my steering wheel in the van, and because I wanted to test it out on this one, because I do want to reuse this knob. It came with the van. The prior owner said it came from the guy that originally had the van. So it's vintage. It did break while the previous owner had it, and so he had a buddy weld it back together again, and it's worked great for me so far, especially since I have manual steering. This definitely helps out with that. I did notice, however, that it's pretty loose with the current setup on it. I've done some research on these steering knobs, and they did come with two different brackets. They came with this style bracket for the older steering wheel. The steering wheel has a thinner arm on it that this actually wraps around, but it also came with a flat bar piece, and the flat bar I don't have. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably buy some stock and make one, and then sandwich it together. And then hopefully it'll hold tight. If not, I can use some clear tubing maybe and throw that underneath it to kind of sandwich it together a little more. But we'll try that out when we get to that point. I did want to test this out now before I finish the wood, before I polyurethane the wood, just because I don't want to mar up that polyurethane or mess it up. I want to do like a one-time, put it on, and it's good to go. And I'm gonna try to polish this up as well because it's looking pretty dirty and ratty. All right, so let's get busy sanding. Okay, so I didn't want to bore you with all the additional sanding I did, but I went ahead and I sanded it, and I blew off all the dust like I did last time, and then I taped off the spokes so that I don't get any of the polyurethane on the chrome. So what I'm going to do is, like I said before, I'm going to start on the bottom. I'm going to do 2 coats probably, and then I'll flip it over, and I'll do 2 coats on the top, and I'll let all that cure about a day, and then I'll come back tomorrow and I'll do 2 coats and 2 coats, and hopefully it'll turn out as nice as the last one did as far as the shine on it. Here we go. And if you haven't seen the first video, I am using a clear gloss polyurethane. I don't want to tip this up too much because it's spill out. But this is what I'm using. Okay, 2 coats are on both sides. Gonna let this sit and dry throughout the day. I'll come back later today. It's early morning here. I'll come back later today and see how it's doing this evening if I have time. Otherwise, I'll just wait till tomorrow morning and do my final coats tomorrow. Okay, so off camera, I came back after putting on the first coat or two of the polyurethane and noticed that I had some ridges still around where I put the epoxy at the joints of the slats. So I went ahead and I sanded those areas down again and then threw on another coat. And now we're ready to put on, I would say, our 3rd coat and see how that does. If that sets up nicely and it looks good, I may just go with that. Otherwise, I'll continue on with a 4th coat. I did want to mention the bottom looks pretty good. I'm not going to mess much with the bottom anymore. I think we're in good standing here. But the top, I want to make sure, because that's the part you see the most. I want to get one more good coat on there at least. So let's get going. Okay, we'll let that dry up and we'll come back and check it a couple hours, see how it's doing. Maybe throw on that 4th coat. Otherwise, we'll call it good. Okay, it's dried up. We're gonna go for a 4th coat. To me, it still hasn't, I want a nice smooth finish and you can still see the wood grain, the striations of the wood through the polyurethane. All right, the last coat is dry. I think it looks great. I think it looks really nice. Feels good. I can see myself using this regularly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the tape off, and then I'm going to try to polish up this this chrome one more time to see if I can bring any further shine out of it. I don't think I'm going to. I don't think it's going to work, but we'll see what happens. So it doesn't look like the polishing did too much to it. Might have brought back a little bit more shine. But I think it still looks great. So now we're going to put the Grant mounting kit back on it. If you remember from my first video, I had put this on the other steering wheel. This wire is making this move on me a lot. Let's try this again. There we go. double checking my instructions here. Make sure I got everything. Yep. And the last piece will be the horn button with the spring. All right, next step, take the old steering wheel off, put the new one on. Let's do it. Okay, so you could use a steering wheel puller if you have one. I don't. I have this basic puller set that I'm going to use. I've used this a couple times on here already. It does work. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop this old one off, put the new one on. Probably should have checked these bolts first to make sure they're going to fit. I think these are the ones I've used before. Yeah, they are, but there's one bolt that's bent. This is the one. It's straight. Yep, those work. All right. Basically what you're doing is these two bolts that are screwing into your steering column, you want to make sure that those are screwed in all the way, because you don't want to start yanking on this. You're going to be tightening this middle bolt, which is going to bring this up, which is going to, bring this down, which is going to basically pop the steering wheel off. You don't want to be doing that and put too much pressure on these bolts and have these bolts rip out with their threads. Otherwise, you're going to screw yourself for future when you've got to take the steering wheel off. Oh, need a different size for that. And by the way, I did mark my center spline where the center of where the steering wheel is going to line up center. go. Now I do have some play in my steering wheel, which is common for these manual steering vans. So I just have to basically find center. That is not. Here we go. All right, feels a lot smaller than the other one. And you'll see the size here. Here's the size difference. This is a 17-inch and this one's a 15.5-inch. So you're losing about 1.5 inches, which honestly I'm okay with. And again, I'm going to use this steering assist knob. I'm going to go ahead and take this off of here, clean it up a little bit. I do have to make a different backing plate here because I don't have, if you'll notice, this one fits over the spoke here, and this spoke is it's just flat. So we're going to go ahead and make just a flat piece to go underneath. All right, we can go ahead and put the horn button on. Don't forget your little spring. This is going to put pressure on the horn button so that it's not rattling around on you when you're driving. There we go. Okay, I got a little bit ahead of myself when I put the steering kit onto the steering wheel. I realized that I forgot about the turn signal cam. So this turn signal cam is what basically, when you turn your turn signal on, this is what stops or basically puts your blinker back to center again. So it turns off. It turns on and off your blinker, basically, or off your blinker. This goes on the back side of the steering wheel. This is the old one. It goes on the back side of this here. This little tab sits on the steering wheel switch side. You see that little tab right there. This does not fit on this. This isn't deep enough. So your kit comes with these 2 little pit pins, if you can see those right there. It comes with 2 little pit pins. And there are instructions in the kit on how to put the pit pins in and how to measure them. I found it easiest to basically measure the distance from the flat spot. Basically, I measured from the flat spot here, from the flat spot on the top of the clamp of the ring here to the top of the tab. And then I did that same measurement from here, from the top of here to the top of the pit pin. And that way you make sure that these aren't going to grind on your gears and anything inside of your steering column as you're turning. So we'll throw this together and we'll see how it goes. Nice thing about these as well, this kit, is it does have a top arrow. So I marked my steering shaft where center is, and all I got to do is just line up that top arrow with my mark. By the way, putting this together on the steering column is much easier than trying to do it on the bench, on the workbench. You've got the center steering shaft right here holding everything together and pretty much in place. All you got to do is just line everything up a little bit. And again, it may not look like I'm center right now. But these vans do have a little bit of play in them. So that's center. Everything I've read basically says that if you've got a quarter of a turn or less of play in your steering column, that means that your alignment is good. If you've got way more play than that, that means that you've got to take it in to get it fixed, unless you know how to do it yourself. And I did what I did last time, and I put these bolts in without putting the top horn piece in. I get too excited, folks. I get too excited. I can't wait. And I realize I miss steps. That's why when they tell us when we're young, read instructions. Make sure you're reading your instructions. If I followed the instructions, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be making these mistakes. And I just realized that this isn't gonna reach, so I gotta fix this. right. Probably so. Notice I just tested my turn signal. Everything seems to work pretty good. All right. As you noticed in this video, this steering wheel went a lot easier and a lot better than the last one. I've learned my lesson to not take these things apart, just leave them on. There is an easier way to do it. So I'm going to take this thing for a test drive, try it out. It's probably not going to be very easy without that steering knob, but I do got to run and get some parts. So this is a perfect opportunity for that. If you like this video, I ask that you hit that subscribe and like button down below. I guess there's a bell down there too, so hit that. And until next time, keep on vanning.